Welcome to the 10th Annual Harry Potter Academic Conference at Chestnut Hill College. I'm Louise Freeman, Professor of Psychology at Mary Baldwin University, and I'm talking today about the psychological and spiritual significance of hand-knit gifts in Harry Potter. Now, there are a lot of Harry Potter characters who knit. We have Molly Weasley and her sweaters that she gives as Christmas gifts every year. There's Hermione, who makes elf clothes in hopes of setting the Hogwarts house elves free. There's Dobby, who knits socks as a Christmas present for Harry. There's Hagrid, who knits something that looks like a canary yellow circus tent on the London Underground. And finally, we have possibly Dumbledore, who we never actually see knitting, but claims to love knitting patterns and certainly appreciates the gift of warm woolen socks. So, what is the significance of knitting to Muggles? Well, soft woolen items provide contact comfort, which for many mammals, particularly in infancy, is a basic need. Harlow, for instance, did a series of studies with monkeys in the 1950s where he showed that if he gave a baby monkey the choice of a cloth mother who does not give milk and a wire mother who does, the monkey is going to spend most of its time clinging to the soft mother and only go over to the wire mother when it needed food. However, if you want someone to have something soft and woolly in today's society, it's actually much faster and cheaper to buy a mass-produced item rather than knit it yourself. Despite this, knitting has surged in popularity over the last 20 years, particularly with young women. So why do people take the time and trouble to hand knit items? Well, people who have studied this question have concluded that knitting by hand increases the emotional connection to the item and to the person who will ultimately use it. There seems to be something about putting together an item stitch by stitch, watching it unfold that way, that indicates personal investment. It shows generosity in the sharing of your time. It shows nurturing, and it shows commitment. There's even a superstition among knitters called the boyfriend sweater curse. The idea that committing to too big a project, something big like a sweater, too early in a romantic relationship is bad luck, and that it could doom the relationship to ending before this particular item is finished. Knitting can also be an act of charity with spiritual significance. Dr. Donna Bowman of the University of Central Arkansas is a theology professor who has written an entire book on prayer shawl ministries. These are church-based groups, predominantly women, who come together, knit together, make these very beautiful hand-knit shawls, and send them out to people who are in need. This is a way of representing the power and the love associated with prayer. These women often pray over the shawl before they send it, and then they hope the person will wear it as they are praying and be reminded of the power of prayer and the love of God. There's also another example of a charitable project is the Red Scarf Project. It's an organization that sends care packages to former foster children who are now in college. And one of the things they like to include is a hand-knit scarf, specifically a hand-knit one, not one that is purchased or mass-produced, so that these young people who are away in college without the support of family can have something that was especially made for them. In more recent years, knitting has become a type of political activism and empowerment, especially for women. Dr. Bowman has also written a paper on the pussy hat movement, the knitting of these pink hats with cat ears that were made especially for the 2016 Women's March as a political protest against the Trump administration. There's also the sort of modern graffiti of yarn bombing, where people take yarn into areas, usually cities or other urban, sterile, cold environments, and cover them with woolen items, woolen blankets. You can almost imagine one of Harlow's little monkeys clinging to this pole, which has now got this nice soft sweater on it. So types of knitting that represent or show types of political activism. So let's turn to knitting in Harry Potter now. Molly's Christmas sweaters, they represent more than anything else family. You recall that Fred and George actually force Percy into his sweater and frog march him down to Christmas dinner, will not let him sit with the prefects, telling him that Christmas is a time for family. We can also remember in Order of the Phoenix that Percy upset his mother by sending his sweater back during the period where he was estranged from the family. Ron, too, often doesn't appreciate his mother's gift. Despite what the movie images tell us, the book specifically says that his sweater does not have an initial on it, so it's not personalized, and it's always maroon, which is the color he doesn't like. So for Ron, these sweaters often illustrate his feelings of being overlooked and overshadowed in his family. He actually gives his sweater away to Dobby in Goblet of Fire. More on this later. When Bill brings Fleur Delacour home for Christmas, Molly won't give her a sweater. She doesn't want to waste a homemade sweater on Fleur, who she considers shallow, materialistic, not worthy of her son. She does not want Fleur as part of the family. She's hoping this relationship won't work out, so she's sort of using the sweater curse there in hopes that by not giving the sweater, she is going to encourage this relationship to run its course. But for Harry, of course, these sweaters are quite meaningful. They represent his de facto adoption into the Weasley family and the love and the acceptance that he found there. Prior to Hogwarts, he was stuck wearing most of Dudley's old clothes, including this very ugly brown and orange sweater that was so revolting that he accidentally did magic even before he knew he was a wizard in order to shrink it so he wouldn't have to wear it. But he gets a sweater from Molly every Christmas except in Deathly Hallows, and it's always highly personalized. In Philosopher's Stone, his sweater is described as emerald green and as also being of higher quality than the one that the Weasley boys get. We don't know why he has a green sweater in this particular case, but later Molly buys him green dress robes and says that she thought they would bring out the color of his eyes. So maybe this emerald green sweater is another reminder to him that he has his mother's eyes. In any case, it's probably the first piece of clothing that was ever specifically made and gifted to him. In Chamber of Secrets, the sweater is not described, but it is mentioned that the Slytherin table makes fun of it during Christmas dinner. So in this book, where Harry's worried that he is the heir of Slytherin, it's probably a good thing that he has this sweater that the Slytherins don't like. In Prisoner of Azkaban, the sweater is scarlet with the Gryffindor lion, and we have to wonder if Molly was thinking about Harry pulling out the sword of Gryffindor from the Sorting Hat and saving Jenny's life the previous spring. In Goblet of Fire, the sweater is green with a dragon on it, which shows represents his victory over the Hungarian Horntail. In Order of the Phoenix, his sweater is described as the usual hand-knitted jumper. This is very interesting because in Order of the Phoenix, the Negredo of the series, Harry is gradually losing all the things he loves about Hogwarts. Visits to Hagrid, his firebolt, playing Quidditch, all because of the threat of Voldemort and the threat more immediately of Dolores Umbridge. But interestingly, he is still very much attached and secure as part of the Weasley family, enough that he is now thinking of these jumpers as, quote, usual. And then finally, in Half-Blood Prince, the sweater has a golden snitch on the front, and of course this is the year that he is Quidditch captain. Now the sweaters remain a very important presence in Deathly Hallows, even though Harry is not there to get a new one from the Weasleys. When he and Hermione are in Godric's Hollow, listening to the Christmas carols in the cemetery, Harry chokes up and remembers Christmases at Hogwarts, and specifically, he remembers Ron in a hand-knitted sweater. So they go to Bathilda Bagshot's. They have the very disastrous encounter with Nagini that breaks Harry's wand. They escape. A day later, they're in the Forest of Dean. Harry goes out to keep watch, and he is, at that point, wearing all the sweaters he owned. We have to assume that all the sweaters he owned at this point are probably Weasley sweaters. So he sees the silver doe, follows it to the pool, sees the sword of Gryffindor, and of course has to strip off all the sweaters before he can jump in. He jumps in, Ron shows up and rescues him in the scene that John Granger is fond of calling the Ron the Baptist scene. But what happens once Harry's out of the water? Well, he pulls the sweaters back on. As he pulled sweater after sweater over his head, Harry stared at Ron, half expecting him to have disappeared every time he lost sight of him, and yet he had to be real. So Harry is reuniting with Ron, but looking at him through sweater after sweater. He pulls the sweater over his head and he sees Ron. He pulls another sweater over his head and he sees Ron. He can't believe it's real. So this is showing, I think, not only this reconciliation of Ron and Harry, but the reestablishment or the reconnection with his entire extended Weasley family. As you may recall, Ron had been afraid to go home that Christmas because he had abandoned Harry, so he wasn't at home to get his sweater from Mom that Christmas, but the sweaters are present here at this reunion. Turning down to Hermione, who's our knitting activist here, she knits elf clothes to leave out in the Gryffindor common room, hoping to set the house elves free. Now, why does Hermione knit all this stuff by hand? She starts this when she is home for the summer, when she cannot use magic. And she admits that she is very slow and not very good without magic at knitting. But she didn't have to do this. She could have just gone and bought a multi-pack of socks at the discount store and used those to free elves, just like Harry used his plain old sock to free Dobby. So why knit? Well, I think this shows her genuine dedication to the cause, her commitment to the cause, and her genuine care for the house elves in their plight. Unfortunately, she is just not a very good knitter, even when she thinks she is. She says, once she gets back to Hogwarts and is knitting by magic, I'm getting better, I can do patterns and bobbles and all sorts of things now. Well, is she really getting better? Look what Harry had to say about it. Harry had to admit she was getting better. It was now almost always possible to distinguish between the hats and the socks. So she may be getting better, but she's still not very good. And of course, she's not very good at freeing the elves either. They won't pick up her clothes. Dobby takes them all. She actually doesn't succeed in setting any elves free through this endeavor. And I think her bad knitting is reflective of the fact that she doesn't really understand the complexity of the house elf situation, that the centuries of slavery can't be undone simply by handing the elf a hat and setting him free. Speaking of elves, Dobby, of course, gives socks to Harry at Christmas. He is devoted to Harry, very grateful for Harry for setting him free, but also really devoted to Harry even before that on behalf of all elves, because their lot in life apparently got better after Harry defeated Voldemort the first time. So he knits Harry these mismatched Quidditch socks for Christmas, the same Christmas that Dobby himself gets Ron's sweater. Harry thinks enough of these socks to wear them to the Yule Ball, where they are seen by Crouch, disguised as Moody. Nice socks, Potter. Well, it's these two hand-knit Christmas gifts that actually make it possible for Harry to emerge as a hero at the second task. Remember what Dobby says to him as he comes to the library to give Harry the gillyweed. Harry Potter has to go into the lake and find his Weasley, and take his Weasley back from the merpeople. Your Weasley, sir, your Weasley. Weasley who is giving Dobby his sweater. So Dobby is motivated not only by concern for Harry, as if that wasn't enough, he's concerned about Ron and grateful to Ron for the gift of the sweater and wants to save him. Now, how did Dobby know about the gillyweed? Well, he overheard it from Mad-Eye Moody, and we later learned this was quite deliberate, that Moody, or Crouch as he actually was, remembered the socks. You told me at the Yule Ball that a house elf called Dobby had given you a Christmas present. So this is how the connection was made. So it's interesting that these two hand-knit gifts are able to do what the previous gift, the book that Crouch gave to Neville, that he hoped would get the information to Harry, it didn't work, but the hand-knit gifts did. And I think this is, again, sort of illustrating the extra love, the extra devotion, and the extra power of hand-knit items. Now, question I have is, does hand-knit wizarding wear hold special significance for Harry Potter fandom? Well, from personal experience, I would have to say yes. This is a picture of me a few years ago at the conference. I am wearing my hand-knitted Ravenclaw scarf that I'm also wearing today. This was given to me by a Facebook friend who I griped on the Virginia's for Wizards page that I could never find any bronze and blue Ravenclaw wear. And this person, who I knew only very slightly through Harry Potter fandom, offered to knit me a sweater. A scarf, which is a wonderful thing. So lots of people knit Harry Potter inspired clothing, other accessories. There are whole books of patterns on the subject. And in fact, if you go to Ravelry.com, a popular knitting site, you can find 46,000 plus Harry Potter projects. But I'm interested in collecting some more data on this. Dr. Bowman and I are actually doing a project together, an upcoming study, and so I'm looking for participants. I'm particularly interested, I need Harry Potter fans, first and foremost, but I'm particularly interested in fans who either own a hand-knitted or crocheted, any yarn art Harry Potter item that they either bought from the person who made it, bartered for it, or received it as a gift, or people who have created these items, who have knitted or crocheted a Harry Potter item, either for themselves, to sell, or to give away. So if you would like to be part of this study, please email me and I will send you a link to a survey that will ask you about your engagement with fandom and your thoughts and feelings about others. By the way, this project is not limited to Harry Potter fans. I'm also interested in Firefly fans like my son here and Jane Cobb hats, and also Doctor Who fans, who of course are famous for their knitted scarves as well. So thank you for your time and attention, and I look very much forward to discussing this with you.